I'll start with the presidential candidate, Tope Fasua. What does your party, the Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party, stand for? I mean, set the scene for us by presenting a new vision of Nigeria. Your vision.
Thank you very much. I mean, going by the name Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party is a bit long, but you just call us Abundant Nigeria. And I think basically what we're trying to say...
So why did you call that in the first place?
Oh, well, it's all right, but what we're trying to say is that Nigeria is full of abundance, and it's a product that in spite of this abundance of especially human resources, apart from natural resources, where we happen to be the country with the highest number of poor people in the world, the highest number of out-of-school children, the highest level of inequality according to Oxfam. I mean, we of late, in the last 1 year, we found ourselves like hitting the radar in a very wrong way, and actually gaining some laurels, some Olympiad laurels, for all the wrong reasons. So our idea of a new Nigeria will be a Nigeria where the potentials of the people is actually realized, because we shouldn't be where we are today. And that ties into our economics, apart from our sociology as a people, where people that are set against each other, our diversity has become a problem rather than being an advantage and all of that. So basically that's our vision for this country. I mean, and then when you talk about the hard facts in economics, this is an economy that should be growing in double digits by every means, because of
and
the
of course
stage
you
of the
should
economy.
know, you're an economist.
Exactly, because of the stage of where our economy is. As a matter of fact, did the research in the 60s and part of 70s, the U.S. economy was growing at 15, 17, 18%. And here we are, we're growing at 1.5% when the same U.S. is growing at 4.1%. So we should be doubling down on growth big time. We should be doubling down on the quality of life for our people. Over 90 million Nigerians are in extreme poverty. Over 80 million Nigerians, defecate outside, live in conditions that are subhuman. And we're saying that irrespective of the fact that we're fairly new on the scene, we can make an impact on this now. Such that no matter what happens by May 2019, and even starting now, Nigerians must start to live in a much better manner, in a much better environment, and governance, real governance, must come to Nigeria.
Well, what you're saying sounds like what most Nigerians would say. I mean, the ordinary person on the street feels the same way that you do. They'll articulate their concerns the way that you have. I mean, what we're looking for is how you're going to advance that to the next stage of actually translating it into votes that could win an election.
Oh, well, in terms of translating into votes, what you do is when you wake up every morning, you hit the road, you try and see how many people you can talk to. I'm here on a ride, maybe a couple of people listening to me today will feel, well, this guy's...
Well, hopefully more than a couple.
And of course, earlier today I've been on another TV station and so on. So we have to keep doing what we're doing until we get to that point. There's one thing, I mean, you're doing the right thing, bringing people like us on board. We need a prime time as well, because the APC and PDP that seem to get the prime time, there's a reason why they're there, because they've been around for a bit, and they were even established at the point where the government was funding political parties. We're not being funded. We have to scrounge and scrape and see however we're going to survive to the next day. However, the bottom line is this, that we need the platform of a political party in order to articulate these ideas and put it in the space to say, this country, we should be taking 50, 70 million people out of poverty over the next 4 years or thereabouts. We should be growing at 15% consistently over the next 4 years, over the next five years. India is growing at 8.5% as we speak. 1.4 billion people. I believe we can do it. And we can also improve significantly the livelihoods of our people, their standard of living. Actually, Mr. Charles, we haven't started, all right? And as you can see, I mean, you're here in Nigeria. If you just take a step outside, 100 meters away from here, you begin to see the squalor in which our people live, which actually puts us in a situation of infamy as a country, because the world is watching and wondering why this country can't get its act together. And we're saying that enough already of analysis, enough of writing about this. We need to step in the fray, and that's why we're here.
Now, Dr. Vitalis Ajumba, let's talk about your party, APGA. What do they base their policies on? What is their appeal?
Thank you very much. It is in the doing. Many political parties, when they want to come on board, they promise what they cannot do. I'm sure you've heard about that we're going to provide this infrastructure. We're going to do this. We're going to do. As soon as they come on board, it's quite a different thing. But it's not in APGA. If you go to Anambra State, for example, it's an example of a state that is run by APGA, and that state. I'm sure you are from Anambra.
No, I'm not.
You're not from Anambra. You go to Anambra. Yeah. Anambra is linked with good roads to every.
I have actually been to Anambra, and in fairness to you, I found it to be really well managed. I mean, absolutely picturesque state. All the little hills and little sort of roads and things. Beautiful.
APGA as a party has a good program. APGA as a party is sticking to its manifesto. Some go on board with a good manifesto. As soon as they go into office, they change the manifesto. So any state that is run by APGA, and Anambra is like a model. If what you see in Anambra is good, then any other state that has APGA that has a candidate in APGA is also going to do the same thing. So APGA is a party that believes in the good service to the people.
Now you're trying to do something in Imo State.
Yes.
That's an uphill task, though, isn't it?
It's not really an uphill because we have Anambra as an example. If you love what is happening in Anambra, come to Imo State and do the same. We have a very good candidate in the person of Ararume, who is doing quite well and who has done quite well in his business. And he going because he was in another party. And I wouldn't like to mention the name of the party. He was in another party. And Imo people told him, if you go on this party, we're not going to vote for you. Go to APGA, that is a party of the Igbos. Go to APGA, that is doing well in Anambra State. And give us the same type of governance that Anambra State are enjoying. And that is why he's in APGA.
Yeah, but is that not something that is perhaps the wrong approach to Nigerian politics? That should be a unifying thing. You just said the party of the Igbos. I mean, you're the first APGA person who's come here who's actually said it's a party of the, because most of the others try and fudge and sort of hum and say, well, no, we're a national party. Well, we just happen to be focused on that part of the country. But you've called it an ethnic party, basically.
Well, it's not really an ethnic party. I am saying that if you go to Anambra, I'm from Igbo State. I'm an Igbo man. If we enjoy what is happening in Anambra, an Igbo man will like exactly what's happening in Anambra to happen in. So
it's in that context that you mentioned. Okay. Well, let's turn to you.
If APGA is given the opportunity to produce the president of this country, that same thing that is happening in Anambra will happen in Nigeria.
Well, it doesn't follow. But let me turn to you, Professor Jibo Ibrahim. You're the objective voice here. Aside from criticism of the ruling APC and the main opposition PDP coalition, how much are these parties actually trusted on things like the economy? Because I mean, I think Tope was talking about the fact, and he was also hinting at the fact that most of these parties don't actually, they just say they're going to do something and they don't actually do it. But if you look at the manifestos that came out this time, they're pretty comprehensive. I mean, if you look at what the PDP has put out, if you look at what the APC has put out, they've got all their vision, then they've got pages that actually explain exactly how that vision is going to be accomplished.
Well, the manifestos this time, their platform messages are clear, but they've been clear in previous elections. What strikes me really about these elections, that already by mid-2016, a lot of Nigerians felt the two main parties were failing in terms of their expectations. PDP failed, that's why it was voted out. APC was voted in. It took them 6 months to even appoint a cabinet. Things were going extremely slowly. Economic management was poor. We ended up in a recession. And it was in that context that people started looking for an alternative platform. And it's also in that context, really, almost 3 years ago, that this term third force started emerging in terms of what Nigerians were searching for. But there's a paradox in Nigerian politics. Often Nigerians are dissatisfied with parties that exercise power, but they are very slow to latch on to new parties. The fact of the matter is that the big traditional parties have a very high capacity to maintain support for themselves among Nigerians, and you find most Nigerians very unhappy with the choice of those two parties, but end up voting for one of them.
Is that perhaps because they are skeptical of sort of bringing something in that they're not entirely sure about?
I think skepticism is one of the issues, but I think there's just a more fundamental issue. Visibility, getting known costs a lot of money and time. And the new parties have neither the resources nor the time to get their message across.
Right. And that's a very interesting point you're making, because if you look at parties like APGA, for instance, which have broken ground and actually won governorships and sort of parliamentary elections and that sort of thing, that's because they were much more focused and targeted in a limited area rather than trying to spread across the country, and that suggests that they're doing it sort of the right way, because I mean it's translating into victory. But what about parties like Mr. Fasua's Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party and Kingsley Moalu's Young People's Party, etc., that are making their first entry into the political scene?
I think the expectation among most Nigerians is that there will be a viable alternative if a large cross-section of dissatisfied Nigerians are confronted with one third force candidate. And there was a lot of attempt to develop processes that would lead to that. Unfortunately, those processes failed. And we have a number of candidates, such as Fasua, such as Ezekwesili, such as Mohalu, who represent this new trend in politics. But because there are too many of them, you don't have a clear
confusing, really,
alternative. You don't have an alternative. What you have are a number of interesting candidates that for a lot of people are saying, let's study them and the next round we'll see how far they'll go. But Tope, that's not to discourage you.
Just based on what he's saying, what's your reaction to that? Because I mean, there was talk that you guys, even the PDP and the APC, had to come together as some sort of a coalition in order to have the kind of clout to take on, the Nigerian political scene.
Our renaissance, and indeed that's our revolution, right? And I'm speaking well on behalf of myself and a few of those who have come up, not all. It's a revolution that's going on. It's a political revolution. It's bloodless. It's peaceful, but it's intellectual. The reason why an Atiku and a Buhari are putting documents in the space, remember that Mr. Buhari people actually denied that they made any promise whatsoever in 2015. And that was shocking. Because people were confronting them and saying, you said you were going to declare your assets, you said you were going to do this, and, the other gentleman, like Mohammed, said, we did not promise anybody anything. And then you wonder on what basis were they voted for. But now we're forcing their hand on the power of intellectualism, on the power of ideas to say, you've got to tell us what you're doing. I put my manifesto in the space about 4 or 5 months ago or more, because I knew it was going to be all about the ideas. And even if you look at Atiku's ideas and mine, you see a bit of, but again, nobody has a monopoly of knowledge, So that's in the first place, that's what we have to note, that this is a different kettle of fish. This is not about a few politicians coming together as they did in APC for the purpose of grabbing power. This is a cry for help for Nigeria to say, we've got people who have their senses here together. And that what we are seeing and what we're getting at the level of leadership, especially at the presidency level, is not at par with it doesn't represent what we are in Nigeria. Right. So people are stepping up to say, we can do it as well. And these are ideas. And I've always told my colleagues that the best foot forward for us is to dump all our good ideas in the states. If they're going to steal it, let them steal it. But all those ideas, we cannot wait until 2023 before we put it out there. Apart from that, these parties, again, I will repeat, it's not just about romanticism in terms of Nigerians just liking PDP on it. It's because of their access to the wealth of this country. And the fact that oftentimes we see a scenario where they can easily dip hands into the resources of this country. And that's why you see at the state level, if any party that's ruling at the state level, nothing happens for any other party on the local government level.
But let's just get a. I mean, your party, the ANRP, it's got you as its candidate. You're slightly younger. You're perhaps a trifle more positive, more open-minded, more forward-looking.
Thank you, sir.
But beyond all of that, I mean, let's have a dose of realism here. Do you really think that you're going to win the elections in this country?
So basically, first of all, to hack back to what I just said, the point now is, mind you, there's something called the weaponization of poverty. All right, Mr. Charles, I was with Donald Duke a few days back, and we in a session like this, and he actually made a claim that between 1979 and 1983, Shagari budgeted budget was an equivalent of $25 billion. As I'm speaking to you, because I've done a lot of work in this space as well, including going outside to demonstrate, to this government. As we're speaking, the budget for this year is $25 billion. I was talking about the population that has tripled or quadrupled since then. And so we've seen a scenario where the economic policies and even the political, socio-political policies of this country has only impoverished the majority of this country. And those who think they have, a lot of the wealth is based on corruption and cutting corners. And they call it entrepreneurship. So we need a new. And in terms of me winning, there are two ways of winning. I can either go look for money and borrow money and then compromise myself and get funding from everywhere I could find it in order to delude myself of sitting in some Aso villa before I start to do the things that I need to do. Otherwise, I could also begin to mainstream the ideas that I have, and so I find myself not only as a politician becoming an activist. I've been on the street at least twice, carrying placards, mobilizing people to say, this is unconscionable. You can't be reducing the budget for 2019 from $23 billion to $23 billion when population is increasing at 3.2% and inflation is eating the value of money at 11.28%.
Right.
And countries like South Africa is doing $155 billion in terms of budget. And we say we're the largest economy.
I understand.
So these are very cogent issues that cannot wait for the political process and cycle. We need to anchor in and do and work on those things immediately. So I believe that if I can achieve that, I would have won.
Right. So you're something of an agent provocateur, making people think.
Call me that.
Right. Okay. Let me turn to you, Dr. Ajumba. Beyond, a clearly rousing statement from Mr. Fasua there, and of course the novelty of being in politics. How much can these, I hate to use the term and not to sound derogatory, smaller parties really ride the wave and turn it into real success at the ballot box, like your party, APGA, seems to have done, at least on the state and parliamentary level?
Yeah. If you ask me why does APGA keep winning in Anambra, I'm using Anambra as an example because it's a state that have been in APGA, and the governors that pass through APGA,
well, it really is the only state.
The only state.
Right. So
now,
let's be clear on that.
When the economy of the state is not doing well, when the governors are not doing well, there's nothing they can expect, because most governors, what they do, they try to impoverish the citizens so that you won't have money to challenge them. And if you don't have money to challenge them, just like the smaller parties, unquote, just like the smaller parties, there's nothing you can do at the time of election, because at the time of election, it's all about money. The voters if you give them 1,000 naira or 2,000 naira, the party in power will give 20,000 and do vote buying. The smaller parties may not have that money. Even if they have the brightest idea, the best governorship approach that they try to exhibit, but they cannot go far. It's not that they cannot win, but they don't have the money to win. If you see what happened in the past elections, it's all about money. And because the citizens are hungry, they need something to eat. You can imagine an old woman who had been looking for food to eat all day long, and suddenly you ask her to vote, I'll give you 10,000. And she now begin to imagine how many days she will use that 10,000. The type of food it is going to give to the family.
Especially when she believes that in any case the politicians are not going to make any difference anyway. Yeah.
So what they do, the instrument they use is to impoverish the people, so that at the time of election they bring out the money.
And that's not working in Anambra.
And that's not working out. The Abga government in Anambra State brought out money and helped the SME. And give them the infrastructure they need. And they can see the economy of Anambra is moving, is growing.
But to be honest, in fairness to the other parties, I mean, Anambra State has always had a high concentration of very wealthy people. I mean, Anambra State, according to some of the statistics we've seen, has the greatest concentration of millionaires per square mile than any other part of Africa. So to that extent, it may not necessarily be your policies that is making a difference.
No, it's a policy, because you need to have an enabling environment.
Right.
If there is no enabling environment, the millionaires or the billionaires you see in Anambra State wouldn't have stayed in Anambra. They probably would have gone just like what happened in Abia during the time of the kidnapping and all that. So we have a good government of Abga, and that's the same good government that will be transmitted to Imo during the time of election. And they will not take example from what is happening in Abia. I mean, what is happening in Anambra, and vote Abga in Imo.
Right. So the advice that you would give to parties like Tope Fasua's party?
The advice I would give to them is to preach against money politics. It is good if you give somebody money and he says, give me, or there's no person will give money that would, during the time of lead, that would reject. But tell them to chop their money and vote the right candidate. Vote the person who will give you good governance.
I like that.
Chop their money. Chop their money and vote.
Well, let's get the objective assessment of Professor Jibo Ibrahim here, because you talked about earlier that while the two main parties, the APC and the PDP, the traditional established parties, have lost considerable trust, because the perception is that they've been in government and that they haven't actually entirely, at least, delivered, and therefore they have an image breakdown. Can we say that the newer, smaller parties like the ANRP have had an image build up? In other words, contrary to what these other ones are having an image collapse, these new guys are coming up with new ideas, fresh perspective, and therefore an image build-up that is a sort of makeover away from the traditional or the traditionally held negative view of the Nigerian politician. Or is that much too optimistic an assessment?
Well, the fact of the matter is that they are having quite an impact, especially among younger Nigerians and in the social media, where people could easily access their ideas and their platforms. But they have not penetrated the traditional media. They have very low presence in the major newspapers, for example, and in the major television and radio stations. So their ideas have not spread as widely as they could have. The other challenge is because you are actually talking about multiple voices. we have, if I remember correctly, over 50 people contesting for the presidency this time round. That's a lot of voices out there, and it's quite confusing to people trying to remember who said what. So even the good ideas you've picked up in the social media, for many citizens, they have the problem of attribution. They remember, this person said something quite nice, is it this one or that one? So the question of...
So a crowded field, basically, and overly crowded.
The field is really crowded.
Right, but let me just ask you this, because we're going to take a break in a moment. You talked about the fact that a lot of these parties have not yet quite broken into the traditional media with newspapers and that sort of thing. And yet you talked about them appealing more to young people. And most young people don't actually read newspapers, let's face it. I mean, they're getting a lot of their information from social media, and that's where these guys are gaining considerable traction. And perhaps it's the fact that the older crowd are not really completely, in a sense, disembodied. I mean, moving completely away from what the young people are actually doing and how they're getting their news. And the other thing, of course, is that the campaigns have just begun. I mean, officially begun. I mean, we have to sort of look at what progress they make, what sort of commercial airtime they buy, assuming they have, because now they can go and buy advertising and put their parties on air and so on. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Well, the fact that a lot of young people are on the social media and they have access to these messages makes them the party for tomorrow, because people will grow to know them. And one of the difficulties in terms of political party development in Nigeria is this ability to sustain a party through time, through the decades, till that small party of yesterday becomes a big party of today. Like
so in good times and bad times.
Yeah, like the Greens in Europe today. So that's really the vision that I have for them, and that's, I think, the trajectory that they should take. But one also has to look at how Nigerians vote. Okay, young people are on the social media, they'll like these new voices in town. But when the vote comes, when the day comes, we've made the point already, I think Tope was making the point about the growth of poverty in this country. A lot of these poor Nigerians don't have access to a lot of the new media. A lot of them are very dependent on patrons, and in any society where you have patron-client relations, when elections come, the question the clients will ask, who are the candidates? What will they be? What names will appear? The names will be Atiku and Buhari, and it becomes very difficult to add these 10 other beautiful new voices that have emerged, but have not yet really imposed themselves on people's consciousness.
Okay, thank you for that so far. This is an absolutely riveting discussion. We will talk more with you in a hot second. You're watching Nigeria, the road to 2019. Plenty more still ahead. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for staying with us. And I'll come to you, Tope. You've been traveling around the country, meeting people, being interviewed by the press. What are they saying to you and about you? I mean, are people quite clear of your identity politics and what you stand for?
Oh yes, I thank God. You know, thankfully, I think I have one of the most resounding rhetoric of the lot. Actually, you know, I mean that's the truth.
Well, you would say that.
Yeah, I would say that about myself. but the truth is also that, I mean, I've always been about the debate and, you know, getting to talk about the hard facts, you know, beyond personality. And so the reception has been great. The reception has been great. We can only build on that. This weekend I'm going to be in Katsina State. We'll come back to Kano, Kaduna, you know, and then go down to the east and so on. However, the best we can do is probably to ensure we touch every state. We probably will not be able to go to every local government or every village. There are about 60,000 villages in Nigeria. 60,000 villages. If you look at it, about 10,000 wards in Nigeria. Each ward is about 6 villages on the average. You know, so perhaps more than that. You know, how much money do you have? Again, of course, Nigerians always, you know, want, oh, what can you do for us? And you'd actually be unconscionable to get to some kind of environment in Nigeria and not give them something, because see the kind of conditions that people live in. And this is an international issue for us. And that's the reason why we're not playing at the level of taking a state. Right, because the problem with Nigeria is not at the state level, but at the national level. The kind of visioning we should have for every Nigerian. By now, we should be talking about setting a certain minimum standard of living for our people. Now, no matter where you are, as a Nigerian, there are some things you should not be doing. There are some things you should be doing. Since independence in 1960 in this country, for example, there's never been one plan for housing at the rural level. The best we have is, okay, you have all those houses built in Lagos, Jakonde houses, 2-bedroom flat, 3-bedroom flat for workers in the civil service. And however, those people who live in the villages are also Nigerians. So we leave them, and they're there to build their mud houses, they build it in a very haphazard manner. There's no input from the state. There's no rural planning. No rural planning. There's nothing like, okay, if you want to build your house in the village, this is what you should do. People just build everywhere. And then, you know, and then the first with environmental disasters and all sorts, you know. So this is the areas where we're coming in. So people would actually want you to say, I mean, oh, what can you do for us? Okay, we've got problems. Okay, I mean, I get a lot of that.
And they've got immediate problems.
They've got immediate problems.
You're telling them what you might be able to
do. So
but they're saying, right, show us what you can do right now.
Exactly. So in politics,
before you actually win the election.
In politics in a country like Nigeria, you wouldn't go far if you weren't generous.
Right.
However, you also got to be careful, because hey, this is a business that you get into, you actually will break the bank and spend everything you have, you know. But again, for me, I don't mind doing that because it's going to be for a bigger cause. Okay, but I tell them, I'm on the street demonstrating that that 6 trillion naira should be added to our national budget, and not only that, we want to know what your budget is for.
If you're doing,
and I think that's a bigger cause than giving 2,000 naira to someone.
Yeah, but if you're doing that, I mean, if you're going to give that 2,000 naira, it places you instantly in competition with the parties that can give a lot more money. Because as Dr. Vitalis was saying, that the politicians have consciously impoverished the people,
you know, so
in order to keep them in hock.
None of us at my level can win that war. But what I tell them is this. The normal thing is to say, listen, it's your money, you take it, right? But then again, I've developed another rhetoric to say, you know, that you've been taking this money for years now. 4 years ago you took it, now you're taking it. 4 years hence you're going to take it. But look at it, you're still living in the same condition. So it's seeming like this money is not quite kosher. It can be cost. So I tell them, listen, pray over the money. So we need to begin to put doubts in their mind, to tell them that there's something with this money that you're collecting that hasn't improved your life. And it's seeming like it's a generational cost, because your children are lining up also to collect the same money.
Well, there was a story.
What they believe is what we must use, all right, to get to their minds. And listen, there's probably a curse on this money. Because again, of course, we've seen it done. You know, I mean, people going to shrines and swearing. And people can go to a shrine and say, listen, this 50 million, don't spend it on yourself. You have to spend it to the people, and everything bad that should happen to you happens to them, you know. So they sit down and you see people filing up and they give them 500 naira to 1,000 naira, you know. I mean, again, it's demeaning. But again, it's a major issue.
But you're doing it as well.
We're not doing it.
You said that you give them something.
The way the work is this: if you get to a place where they can't even find water to drink, you'll be unconscionable and stupid for you to just go there and blow all the grammar and tell them what you do when you become president. If you had 5,000 naira, give to the village chief and move on.
Right, okay. I'm going to have to take this to somebody else.
Let it be open. Let it be open.
Right.
You knock their heads together. If the guy cheats them,
okay. Well, there was a story that somebody told me about politics in Nigeria. He said that they came to this village, and there was this guy, a bit like you, Tope, who's saying a lot of lofty things and standing on a pedestal, and some other guy was on the other side of it, and the chief of the village was simply sitting down listening to all that. After a minute, he called one of his aides and says, those bags of rice that we see there, who brought them? He said, the other guy. He said, vote for him, and walked out.
And walked away.
And that seems to sort of underscore Nigerian.
Let me quickly chip in that what we're doing is that in spite of Nigerians, Nigeria must change, right? In spite of the level of poverty, You see, so what we're doing, no matter how they say we're blowing grammar and all of that, we must blow the grammar so that it gets better for everybody, whether they understand it or not. Because there's a way they've been conditioned over time and they become impervious to the suffering, the sheer suffering and the sheer lack. And now we're saying that internationally it is unacceptable. And Nigeria has actually embarrassed itself, and now is the time to salvage this country.
Okay, I'm going to move on to you, Dr. Vitalis Ajumba. In imparting lessons to the new parties, how big a struggle was it for APGA to win over voters, the sort of thing that Tope was talking about, and to explain to them where you stand as an alternative to the APC and the PDP?
APGA started his journey to success from Tope. He did well, of course. How he won and how the victory was taken from him, and he went to court and eventually became the governor. He started his work, followed his manifesto, because he now went to the people, not dashing out money to the bourgeoisie, and used that money we were giving to bourgeoisie to do work, to do the job at Anambra. 2 days ago, yesterday when I was coming to Abuja, I flew in the same aircraft with Tope, His Excellency Tope. Do you know where he sat? At the economy.
He's a remarkable man in that
the economy,
sense. Yes.
To save money, probably. Or maybe that is his way of life. When he was a governor, he was not used to going to the VIP to sit. He was not used to go using the business class. Very simple. It's a part of saving money. But the governors we have now are very flamboyant.
Yeah, but then Peter Obi left your party. I mean, there must have been a reason why he left
that could be an internal problem between him and probably his successor. I don't know.
Well, what I'm saying is that your party clearly failed in some sense, because he left your party and moved on to somewhere else.
He left after being the governor.
Right.
That has nothing to do with whatever he achieved as the governor. And the current governor is also doing well, starting from the successes of Tope and doing better than Tope. And that is APGA. Now, I pity my friend Tope and Moano. They speak big grammar. That is not what the hungry man at the street needs at the moment. There came a time in my village, one rich man, a young man came to him and needed his blessing to be a counselor, to represent him. This guy happened to be a man of God, a born again Christian. So he brought a carton of beer, a carton of wine, non-alcoholic wine, and gave to the man to seek for his blessing. So His Excellency asked him, "You are the son of this person?" He said, "Yes." I heard you are, is it pastor or reverend? He said, "Pastor." It's okay. He said, "Gentleman, it is not yet time for God's children." I don't think
it's not yet time for God's children.
It's not yet time for God's children. They are telling him not to run. That what is in politics is beyond being a born again. So what is in politics now is beyond.
Doctor, you guys have not changed.
Let me tell you. I know you are doing a very good job,
and this country needs to change.
Now you are doing a very good job trying to change the people, but the people you want to change are hungry, and that's the instrument. This big name. Okay, that's your part. ANRP. If you bring one big name in APC or one big name in PDP and to be the presidential candidate, the thing will change. The big money will come. And you see everybody trying to buy tickets, trying to buy the form to be either a governor or whatever in ANRP.
Yeah, right.
Because they know that's why the money is flowing. Now, what people are now interested in is, where is this money coming from? Because they will assume that politicians are the same. If you vote them in, they also go there and do the same thing.
Particularly the hungry ones.
The hungry ones.
Who will need to get there and enrich themselves.
Unfortunately, the hungry ones are greater in number, and they are in majority. The elites like this are just about 10% of the you are about 10% in the voter population, but the majority are those who are impoverished.
That's a very brief response from you, and then I have to go to the professor.
It's very important. Look, it's the stuff that the thesis should be reaching upon. To say, when you have a situation like this, what do you do? The bottom line is the country needs to move on, in spite of the fact that the people have been nailed to the ground. And that is where the so-called elite who blow grammar come in. Because you must keep blowing this grammar.
Yes, I think Tope is right, because you can't just say that, okay, it's going to be more of the same every day. Somebody's got to start making that change.
Nigeria is so vulnerable now.
Yeah.
Nigeria is so vulnerable. Look, if the world went crazy and we had a third world war, the countries like Niger, Republic, Cameroon, or Benin will defeat this country.
I want to ask him.
One more thing, sir. To say that, listen, the dream we're selling is that the rich of this country can get richer. They don't understand.
Tope.
And the middle class can grow a lot larger. But that, you see, the trick is in those people who have been nailed down by poverty. They need to be lifted. When you lift them up mentally, not only in terms of putting money in their hands, 13 million children on the street. With a problem like that, in two lifetimes, this country has a mortgage.
Just a minute.
13.2 million children who are going to have children of their own.
Somebody else has to speak.
Just a minute.
Sorry, sir.
You started this crusade very late. And I want you to continue this crusade by 2023. You will see a change.
Okay.
Why must this crusade be only? Why must this crusade only be during the election? Immediately after the election, everybody relax and wait for the next.
Yeah, that's a good point. But Tope did say that he's become more of an activist.
Yes. So continue.
And that sort of goes beyond just elections. But Professor Jibo Ibrahim. Can politics, just listening to what you're hearing here, can politics ever change enough in Nigeria where smaller parties and interest groups are more powerful and better able to explain their message to voters, particularly to young people who might be interested in certain issues? I mean, can these parties become part of the mainstream where they become the main opposition to both the APC and the PDP? Because at the moment they're not, let's face it.
You know, in political science literature in Nigeria, the most spectacular conclusion we have reached about Nigerian politics of the Fourth Republic is the failure of political parties to engage with Nigerians on what they stand for. To illustrate this, take the Second Republic. Nigerians understood the PRP was the party of the Talakawa, and that it was taking positions against what it considered feudalism in northern Nigeria.
So there was some ideology.
Yeah. The UPN said education is the key value they want to offer Nigerians. The MPN was focusing on things like housing. So it was easy for people to say, now, this is the party I identify with.
That's a good point.
Today, I spent the last couple of days reading the various platforms of the parties. They're very comprehensive. They're very well written. A lot of it looks like the work done by consultants.
But they all sound the same.
Fasua, who is a consultant, would have written his own because he does that anyway. So I'm saying, I've read this, and at the end, I ask myself, what are they trying to do? All of them, for instance, talk of producing millions of jobs.
Yes.
But they don't tell you how they will produce those millions of jobs. And I know, as somebody who studied politics for a long time, that it's easy to promise heaven to everybody. But how are you going to produce what you are promising? So I think there's a real failure in terms of political parties. It is precisely because of that.
So that's not limited to the bigger or the smaller parties. It's all the parties, right?
So with this failure of the political parties, the voter is not stupid. He listens to these people, and what does the voter determine? They all seem to be saying the same thing. I'll give you this, I'll give you this, I'll give you this. The voter then makes the conclusion that, well, they're saying the same thing, they're making the same promises. What additional inducement should make me determine who my vote goes for? So the voter then reflects and takes a number of considerations.
One of which is purely material.
Yeah, one of which could be material. Now, who will give me more money? But it could also be part of our identity politics. Well, at least this one is from my ethnic group or from my religion. So even if they are all promising the same thing, I have some...
I'm much more likely to trust this person than the other. Right.
So the voters are acting in a very intelligent manner. They are actually analyzing what's being said and taking positions. Looking forward, really, the responsibility of our political parties is to try to be much more concrete in terms of what I will focus on, in terms of what my strategy is. So when the PRP said we are for the Telakawa, what was the first thing they did? They stopped poll tax, they stopped cattle tax, and that alleviated that particular group from what they considered to be oppressive policy measures. So what is really important, and I got quite confused by the time I read the platforms of the APC and PDP. They are very, very similar in terms of the offer. There are some differences in terms of one being more liberal and the other being more state-oriented. So there are some differences. But in terms
of... for example, when you look at the PDP's thing, they talked quite a lot about selling off things like the NNPC
the national
and all the...
They want to sell off the national assets.
So to that extent, there's a marginal difference.
There is a marginal difference. And I think Nigerians would notice that marginal difference, because I think a lot of Nigerians have a clear position on what should happen or not happen to our national assets. So I think the point I really wanted to make is that as we engage in these campaign promises, there are two key questions citizens should ask all the contestants. We don't have unlimited sums of money. We don't have vast resources. You've promised too much. Which ones are you serious about? And how are you going to deliver about the ones you are serious about? So we have to reduce those beautifully written campaign platforms to much more practical approaches in terms of how do we move forward from where we are and what is your focus, what's your emphasis?
Well, let me put that question to Tope Fasua, who is of course a politician. He belongs to a new party, and he's trying to make inroads into the sort of the world of the electorate. We're now officially in the campaign season. What will your campaign strategy be? How are you going to communicate these things? Because you have all these lofty ideas. But how are you going to translate it, as the professor was saying, into practical policy?
Well, but basically, when you're campaigning, you have to speak in the language of those you're campaigning to. As a matter of fact, one thing I've always said about, especially at the presidential level in this country, is that ordinarily speaking, I remember there was a time in the United States that said any leader who cannot speak Spanish in the next 15, 20 years cannot be the president of the United States. I've seen scenarios here where people go to their own people, for example, their own quote-unquote tribe, and then they speak English. So, to a large extent, you must try and communicate in the language that people can understand. Just speaking with it, there's absolutely nothing wrong. If you can speak Igbo and you went to Southeast Nigeria and you speak Igbo to them, absolutely nothing wrong. And we've seen the idea that, sometimes people get so excited when they know, this guy can speak our language now, so we need polyglots, Now, apart from that, now, I wanted to take Professor Jibrin on, because he hasn't read our platform, he hasn't read our manifesto. He read these two guys, and these guys have employed, policy consultants because they can afford them. One of the things that makes my own platform, our own platform in NRP unique, for example, we're talking about How do you fix infrastructure? Rather than to say, we're going to borrow $1 trillion from God knows where, and then pump the money in the system with all the wastage involved, we're saying that we're going to ensure that the students in polytechnics and universities are the ones that are going to do the infrastructure building all over the country, and we can incentivize them by paying them some money. And by doing that, they're going to make their mistakes, but by the time they're leaving university, they have something on their CV. And then they become employable. Because now we've seen a scenario where we've borrowed a lot of money, companies have come here from abroad to do infrastructure, and then they tell you, sorry, we have to bring our people from
abroad. Yeah, but hopefully you're not going to leave all the
people
infrastructure building to people who don't really know how to build
No. But however,
and they're learning on the job.
No, you've got to own your development.
Right.
That's the part that we've missed in this country. If civil engineering students should start out by doing roads in their school, and then outside. Little roads should be done by students of this country.
That's a good point.
Equally, electrical engineering should fix our problem. And even people who read history.
Okay.
A couple of days back, they said some of our languages are disappearing. Who's going to do that? Who's going to collect them? So students of history, students of sociology, anthropology.
Okay. Well, that's a good point.
And those can also be their project. There can be a session on that.
I have to interrupt you there because we're virtually out of time. Dr. Vitalis, I'll give you the final word. Some have suggested that the ambitions, and I think we heard it here earlier, of some of these new parties is quite simply too stratospheric. I mean, they're reaching much higher than they really ought to. I mean, you know, Tope Fasua is a presidential candidate, that perhaps they should concentrate on local government, state assemblies, that by fielding presidential candidates, they're perhaps aiming too high. I mean, what would you say to that?
Well, my advice to them is to start the way ABGA started. If you jump up, that you are going too far. Concentrate on a state. Try to get a state. From there you build their base and go up. And to make people think the way Tope thinks, education is the key. So
he's right on that score.
Yeah, the more people who are educated will think the way you think. But unfortunately, our education is down here in Nigeria. So how many years do you think will produce people who will think the way you think? So that is it. Education is wealth. If you are well educated, that certain kind of money that begins to you, I say you don't need it.
Okay. On that note, I'm afraid I'm really sorry, Tope, but we're totally out of time. Tope Fasua, presidential candidate for the Abundant Nigerian Renewal Party. Dr. Vitalis Jumba, campaign strategist, political advisor, and member of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, and of course Professor Jibrin Ibrahim, senior fellow, Center for Democracy and Development here in Abuja. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, to all of you. Well, that's it for this edition of Nigeria, the Road to 2019. Join us again tomorrow for a fresh edition. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching. Thank you.